We are going to be looking at Sage Sales Orders, some little known functions so you can utilize your software to its fullest. Presenting today is Mr. Robert Rusaniello. With everything, a little bit of housekeeping. You are on mute. We'll be opening up for questions at the end. However, if Robert prefers, I can open it up now. And we will be getting started now. And with that, I am, Suzanne, are you still not hearing us? I'm going to unmute the phones because we seem to be having some issues. Phone lines have been unmuted. Can anyone hear me?
I can hear you. This is Robert.
Okay, so we can hear each other.
Yes, my name's Rena. I can hear you.
Rena can hear us. Suzanne, can you now hear us? Oh, yep, she's here. She's chatting me. Perfect. Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so again, we are going to get started. I'm going to introduce Mr. Robert Rusaniello, who's going to show a sales order. Robert, thank you, and welcome, everyone.
Great. Thank you, Sherry. Okay, so in today's session, we're going to do, I guess what we call a deeper dive in a sales order. Most of our clients pretty much are used to going in a sales order, doing sales order entry, doing some shipping, doing some invoicing, maybe running an open sales order report. We're going to cover just a few topics within the module that either you may not be aware of or that are there and maybe they just haven't been turned on, but maybe something that could be of use to your business. Those things are namely dropships. Some of our clients actually, when they have an order, they will place a sales order. They will then simultaneously place a purchase order and have those goods essentially create a purchase order with the ship to address being the address of the customer, and then have those goods do a receipt of goods, come into your warehouse, and then essentially perform an invoice to ship them out. There is a process that can kind of streamline this just a bit, and that's using dropships. We have gone to some clients that just didn't really realize that feature was in the system, so I'll certainly kind of go through it in detail and kind of show you what's different than processing normally. So we'll definitely go through dropships. We'll talk about linking POs and SOs. Much like dropships, you may be in a situation where you have an order for a customer, or you have multiple orders, and you need to create a purchase order to fulfill that sales order. There is a way for us to handle that simultaneously or streamlined in the system. And actually link the two documents together so that you can either run reports or understand how they're connected. There is also an area in the system called Customer Last Purchase Maintenance. This is kind of a neat feature that's been around in the system for a long time, where every purchase and every order is stored in the system, and thus when we're creating a sales order, we can retrieve that information either for a new order or just for research. So I'll kind of alert you guys to where that is and how that works. And then finally, purchase control maintenance. If you're ever in a situation where you either want to restrict what a customer can buy or what a customer cannot buy, there is an area for this. Namely, if we have international customers and they cannot buy a certain item, we can create that exception in an area called purchase control maintenance. And if somebody tries to sell them that, Sage 100 will bark and will not allow that transaction to go through without approval. Okay, so let's start first with dropships. I'm going to go into the system. I'm going to go into the sales order module in the ABC company, and I'm going to create an order for our favorite customer, Mr. ABF, the first one in our list. This will be a simple order for the very first item, the letter file. I'm going to place a sales order for one at $84. Now, as it relates to dropship, you may not know when you're looking at your sales order screen that there is a field down below called dropship. If you're a business that does a lot of dropships, you may decide to bring this field all the way to the top so that it becomes part of your data entry. And thus, if we were drop shipping these items, so we don't necessarily have this in stock in our warehouse, but we're going to call our vendor who is going to drop ship it directly to our customer, ABF. As such, there is a little DS column. We're going to put a checkbox. This is how we know that this line item is going to be drop shipped. Now you'll notice this is stored at the Lines tab, which means that we can have multiple items placed for a customer and only have certain items that are drop shipped be deemed as such. So it's not required that all items on the order be drop shipped, but just the ones that are checked off. And I will mention, this is a very important point. If you're drop shipping an item, what we will see is the system handles drop ships very different than non-drop ship lines. i.e., in Sage, if an item is drop shipped, it completely escapes the inventory process. So if I check this box and I hit accept and I invoice, it will not deplete my inventory of this item. Okay, so very important point. By making this a drop shipped item, it does not remove this item from inventory. It's treated as if the item is outside of your system and going directly to the customer. But step one, we check this off as a drop ship. I'm going to go ahead and accept it. Now at this point, if I wanted to, I can go ahead and click on my little Generate PO button. That's a nice tool. If we wanted to shortcut the process of creating a PO, I'm going to go into my purchase order entry, and I'm going to go to today's date, and you're going to see today's date with PO number 10052. The order type is a D to the primary vendor for that item. So when I open up my PO, it is immediately a dropship PO. I'll explain in just a minute how we can get the SOs and POs to talk to one another, and that's going to be under purchase order options. But you could see that I now have a dropship PO. It's talking to sales order 199. It's set to vendor, the primary vendor for the item. It tells me that the customer number for that sales order is ABF. When I get to the Lines tab, there's my item. We're buying one. The unit cost is $31. Okay, if by chance we didn't have vendor pricing configured, we certainly can alter it here. If it somehow cost $40, we can change it there. And there's some additional pieces of information that normally would be down below here. I'm just simply bringing it up to the main line. Our sales order number 199 is also visible in here. The reason this is at the lines tab is if we have multiple sales orders that will create one purchase order, we can actually make one purchase order to our vendor and fulfill multiple sales order lines. Okay, now this is a dropship PO. Okay, it's going to stay in our PO system until the time that we have confirmation from the vendor that they have shipped the goods to the customer. That still is, and for lack of a better word, a manual process. We have to have some communication via phone, email, from the vendor that they have shipped the items to the customer. At that point, we are ready to do two transactions. We need to pay the vendor through a receipt of invoice, and we need to charge the customer through a sales order invoice. Now, from an accounting point of view, dropships technically are not our inventory. The inventory belongs to the vendor, and based on shipping terms, at some point that transaction will, or title of the goods will pass over to the purchaser. Okay, so based on those rules, we'll determine when we need to create our receipt of invoice and when we need to create our sales invoice. But one thing here, remember with dropships I mentioned they don't pass through our inventory system. So if I try to do a receipt of goods for this dropship, and oops, it won't even show me my dropship PO here. So it was 10052, not even visible. If I try to do 10052, it's going to tell me only standard orders can be entered. This was a dropship order. I can't do it. So what I do is I go through receipt of invoice and I perform the invoice there, which is 10052. I've got my invoice number, and I go to my lines tab, and there's my one item for $40. And I will go ahead and post it to May of 2020, because that is what my AVC company is in. Of course, I'm getting my normal receipt of invoice register and my daily purchases journal. And what I want to point out to you, one big difference in posting is the geo posting for a dropship. Now in this case, this is a cost of goods sold account and AP. Okay. One thing I want you to be aware of with dropships, it does not debit inventory. It does not debit purchases clearing. It debits cost of goods sold. The idea with dropships is once you get confirmation of the goods, a receipt of invoice will hit cost of goods sold, and your sales invoice will hit sales. So what we should find is a debit to cost of goods sold, and when we process our sales invoice, we'll have a credit to sales. So another key point with dropships is that you want to be sure that the receipt of invoice and the sales invoice happen in the same period. If not, you run the risk. Let's say that you do a receipt of invoice in March and you do your sales invoice in April for that drop shipment. The cost of goods sold will go into March with the receipt of invoice, and the sales will go into April with the sales invoice. Not very good from a matching perspective. You're going to have margin, negative margin in March, positive margin in April. You'll kind of have a weird income statement. So as long as you get confirmation from the vendor that they've shipped and you're ready to do a receipt of invoice and PO and a sales invoice in the SO module, they should be done in the same period. Now again, since this transaction avoids inventory altogether, you will not be able to do it in shipping as shipping data entry. So much like we try to do a receipt of goods and PO, we will get shut down from Sage if we try to do a shipping entry. We're going to come into here and do a normal invoice. And there's our 1 unit for $84. And I will go right into daily sales reports and update. And I will update my batch again in 5/1/2020. And with my resulting paperwork, again, the key point here is when I update my invoice, I will have a debit to AR, credit to sales. There is no resulting debit to cost of goods sales or inventory in this transaction because there's no inventory to be moved in this transaction. Okay. So a very neat tool if you do a lot of drop ships. It certainly circumvents the process of having to go through receipt of goods, of having to go through shipping. Okay. As long as you're aware of how to check off the drop ship in the sales order and how to create a purchase order called a drop ship, and just ensure that when you do the resulting invoice transactions, they're done at the same period to avoid a mismatch of revenues and cost of goods sold, you should be in good shape. And I'll certainly hold off some questions until we finish. We'll kind of go through the other items now. Connecting SOs to POs, much like we just saw with a sales order, where I'm going to create another sales order to our favorite customer. In this case, I'm going to buy one, or I'm going to sell one more. I'm not going to make it a drop ship. I'm also going to sell another item. Now you can see this order. Actually, let's go ahead and choose someone that is not a lot serial item. And in this case, these two items are with the same vendor number. This vendor number information comes right from item maintenance, so it's pulling the primary vendor on the account. Okay, so if you don't have that populated, this information will essentially be blank, but you can come in here and essentially allocate a vendor, or if you have a primary vendor and you want to create a purchase order with another vendor, you can. You'll notice here there's nothing with PO numbers because we haven't yet created a PO yet. We go to our Totals tab, and we have this button. Now let me explain this button, Generate PO. If we go into the purchase order module and we go into setup and we go into purchase order options, oops, let's go ahead and open that up again. Under tab number 3, we have a bunch of options here. This is where we have the ability to link up sales orders and purchase orders. And it tells us how, when we go to move or create a sales order, or when we go to create a purchase order from a sales order, what do we want the PO date to be? What do we want the customer number, sorted by customer number? If you notice, we can enable purchase order generation during sales order entry. This is the checkbox that allows that Generate PO button to be visible in the sales order entry. And I will also add one more here. If we wanted to access the PO immediately after generating the sales order, we can. Let's say that we create a PO and we need to go in and add some comments to the PO. We can go ahead and check this off and essentially access it immediately after. There's a whole host of other information in terms of how we want, if we want to push confirm to or email addresses into the purchase order. So definitely some neat information here in terms of how we're handling it. So now, when I go back into sales order entry, and I pull up that sales order that we started, number 200. There's my 2 lines, and I go to totals, and I go to generate PO. It's giving me the PO number that it's using, and the neat thing is, because I checked off that field, it went ahead and it opened up purchase order entry for that PO right as I finished. So now I can go into my PO, I can go ahead and put some comments, and I can go ahead and print and send off my PO. You'll notice here it's linked to sales order 200. At the same time, if I go to sales order 200, I will have the ability to see the PO and the required date for that PO. Okay, so these, the PO and the SO will forever be linked, and there's certainly some reports we could run to have visibility of both the SO and the PO and how they're linked. So a very neat tool. If you're an organization where you're able to do both the SOs and the POs, and you want to handle those transactions simultaneously, you no longer have to do the SO, stop, open up purchase order entry, rekey everything from scratch. Sage can handle a bulk of everything that you need with just one click of a button. Excellent. We're going to move to the next few topics, essentially customer last purchase maintenance, and finally purchase control maintenance. Customer last purchase maintenance has been around for quite some time. You may not be aware of it, but if you go into the sales order module and you go into setup and you go into customer last purchase maintenance and I hit my flashlight, this is going to tell me everything about my customer, the last purchase history for the customer, the item, the date, and and the price, and it's going to tell me the last invoice, the last order, and the last quote, if there's one available. So a lot of great information here. Now, how do we use this? Well, if we are in a sales order, and as a salesman, we're going to go to our favorite customer, ABF, and we're going to go to our lines tab, and you're asking, and they're unsure, or probably they know exactly what they want, but if they were unsure of what they ordered last, okay, you can always go into invoice history and look up that information. But if you click on this little red button here, this is going to tell you per item and whether it was invoiced, order, or quote, and what they purchased. Okay, so you can tell them, yep, you know, you purchased the letter file last month. Are you interested in buying that again? And we can click on it. That pre-populates the line. They can say, yep, they want to buy 2 of them, and they're good to go. Okay, so very neat feature. Again, that tool's been around. Boy, it's been around for quite some time. With that said, I didn't really have this in here, but since we're talking about ways to maybe shortcut the creation of sales orders, I'm sure some of you already recognize if you wanted to copy from, there is a copy from button here, and we can copy from an existing sales order, we can copy from an order in history, or we can copy from invoice history. So if we're on the phone with a customer and they said, hey, I just wanted to go ahead and buy what I purchased last month, we can go into our system, we can pull up an old sales order or invoice, and here it is. There's ABF, and here's our sales order with what they purchased, ready for you to go. Okay, very nice order of $1 million. So that essentially also has been around for quite some time. We do have clients that use this. I will mention one thing with a copy from is it does copy everything exactly how it was from the either sales order or invoice. So if you had a UDF populated, if you had you know, ship via populated, it will pull it in exactly. So you may need to come in and just ensure that the order is fine. But if you had an order that was 20 lines, I can certainly see where that hitting copy from will certainly save you some time and data entry. But it does pick it up and bring it in just as it was in history. Excellent. And finally, we'll discuss purchase control maintenance. Now, this feature is useful if you want to either restrict what you can sell to a customer or what you can't sell to a customer. And this is a one-sided deal. Over here, under sales order options, we first have to check this off. Okay, and we say select items based on either the customer or ship to state. And finally, this is our big decision point. As a company, do we want to restrict what folks can buy or what they can't buy? If we have this set up where the system can restrict what folks can buy, okay, then when we set up our purchase control maintenance table, if somebody tries to buy something else other than what we've indicated they can buy, the system will stop them. The flip side is if we have items not allowed, the opposite holds, where we will say this customer can buy everything in our system other than these few items. And if we try to sell them one of those items on the list, the system will bark and say, I need management approval to do so. Okay. This is a global setting, so we can't pick and choose what we want folks to buy or not buy. So if we set it up this way, it's just going to be the case for everybody. So I'm going to leave it as items allowed. What does that mean? When I go into sales order setup, purchase control maintenance, and let's go ahead and pull up our favorite customer, ABF. And we're going to say that we're only going to allow them to buy this one item. They cannot buy anything else. And again, I normally see this, you know, if you're selling overseas or you're selling to a group of customers that are prohibited. Let's say you have items that are FDA regulated and you're not able to sell them overseas. We can come in here and choose our customer and say this customer can only buy these items, or these customers cannot buy these items. And you can see we have the option to also do it by product line. So if you are you know, if you do have items that are maybe international in nature and cannot be sold domestically or vice versa, you may decide to create a product line for that group of items and thus restrict it to certain customers. But in this case, we're saying that the ABF company can only buy this one item. Now that it is populated here, this system is just flat out not going to let you sell anything to them. It's going to notice this list and it's going to stop you. So if I go into sales order entry, and I go to customer ABF, and I try to sell them something else, it says, warning, you've entered an item that is not allowed for purchase. Do you want to proceed? Now, through role maintenance, I have the ability to override this. Okay? If I did not have the ability to override this through role maintenance, I will not see this message. I will flat out, you know, say okay, and it will be cleared out. In this case, I have the ability to override it, so I'm gonna, but nonetheless, I'm gonna hit no. If I were to sell them the 101 H2H, no problem. Okay, so again, a nice feature that came about several versions ago that allows us to dictate what we can and cannot sell to customers. Boy, with that said, I think we've kind of gone through what I wanted to cover. I think what I'll do is maybe open up the floor to some questions. If you guys have anything else, maybe specifically related to SO, feel free to either enter in the chat window or we can open up the phone lines and we'll see if we can get those answered.
The lines are open, so if there are any questions, please just let us know.
And I just looked at the chat line. I don't see anything open on the chat line.
Correct. I just checked that as well.
Excellent.
Well, I don't think there are any questions, but if something comes up, you can always reach out to us at AM for account management, am@goism.com. Also want to remind everyone that Sage Summit is coming up in Atlanta May 9th, 10th, and 11th. Robert and I will be there. We'd love to see you there too. It's a great convention, conference, full of lots of learning tools, networking, and it's a great experience. So we would urge you to go. If you want more information on registering for that, ISM has secured a $99 price for our users, which is $200 under the going price for registration right now, so please reach out to me about that. Other than that, I will thank everyone, and Robert, I especially thank you for your time in this great presentation. Everyone have a wonderful day, and thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.